Apparently hundreds, maybe more, of the clergy have said that they are prepared to become criminals if the government outlaws conversion therapy. Up to 500 people, most of whom are clergy in various Christian denominations. I think a lot of Islamic imams probably agree with this as well.
Most religions, don't.
Most religions have signed an open letter to Liz Truss, who is Foreign Secretary and Equalities Secretary, in protest against moves to ban the practice of counselling LGBT people with the aim of converting them to heterosexuality. It's something out of the Middle Ages as well, isn't it, really, when you think about it, really quite disgusting. Tim Dieppe, head of public policy, or Dieppe, head of public policy at Christian Concern. Mr. Dieppe, what are Christians concerned about?
Good evening, James. Thanks for having me on your show here. First of all, this is a Christian letter, explicitly a Christian letter from Christian church leaders, saying that they're very concerned about legislation that the government is proposing to bring in. It's consultation open at the moment that closes on Friday about this. And the consultation says that they intend to bring in new laws that would criminalise talking to children about their gender or their sexuality, or indeed talking to anybody without a proper letter of consent of some kind being signed about it. We think this is a clear breach of human rights in terms of freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And the letter in particular is concerned about freedom of religion in that respect, that pastoral conversations and prayer and just youth work as well with children and young people could be subject to criminal sanctions. And we think that is completely unreasonable. And
why do you think
they will refuse to obey such a law if that's what happens?
Why do you think religious people should be allowed to talk to young children without their parents' consent? Surely that is just asking for trouble.
Consent. It's not about parents' consent. It's about the proposal is that children are not able to consent to a conversation about this, even if they desperately want it. So here you have a child with gender dysphoria who is struggling about their gender, who's thinking maybe I'm a girl in a boy's body or a boy in a girl's body or something like that, and wants to talk about it. If you talk about it, and if you possibly suggest that maybe they're not actually in the wrong body, you could risk a criminal sanction.
But is that for medical professionals, isn't it, that conversation? Isn't it?
What medical professions have any of you lot got?
This is a conversation that anybody should be able to have.
But they're not qualified, are they? Not qualified.
Not with my children, you're not. I mean, why should I let some chap like you talk to my child about their sexual orientation?
If the child is asking for this conversation and wants
I'll deal with it as the parent, not
or
you.
A trusted relative or a trusted teacher or a trusted youth worker or something, that trusted person shouldn't be criminalised by having that conversation.
But they could do damage because they're not qualified to give counselling and stuff like that.
Listen, you're talking to children about their own experiences, their own struggles, their own things. Anybody should be able to have a conversation.
I actually don't think religion of any form should be allowed in schools at all. I think religious schools should be banned, and I think people should be allowed to make their minds up when they become adults as to whether or not they want to be religious, because what a lot of people like you do is, in my mind, you groom people into believing, which most people in this country don't, about some fictitious figure who lived thousands of years ago. It's people like you that are causing the trouble.
But James, it sounds like you want to groom people into believing there isn't a God. Okay, so you're
sorry, I didn't hear. I want to groom people into being what?
That there isn't.
Believing that there isn't a God.
Well, there isn't a God, is there? I mean, can you prove there is a God? I can prove there isn't.
Can you prove
there absolutely. Isn't? Looking at the trouble around the world and everything else, of course there's not a God. And the God you want to believe in is such a, wants everybody to bow down and scrape and do exactly as he says, and apparently it's a he and not a she. And you laugh. Why do you religious people laugh when you know you are actually on the wrong side of the argument? And why? Listen, here's another thing. Why are so many religions...
I'm laughing, James, because your arguments are so weak. That's what I'm laughing. This point about the problem of evil. Well, where do you get the idea of evil and good from? Because there's a God who defines what's good and evil. You know what's
No,
good.
you know that
what's
without
good
a
because
religion.
you've got a conscience inside you that God's placed inside you. So
You
actually,
are
the argument
talking
people is
complete
an
and
argument
utter
for the
rubbish.
existence
Conscience, that is.
of a God, of a moral lawgiver who tells us what's right and wrong.
You can
Can
do
I
that
ask you
without
a question?
God.
Can I ask you a
Sure,
question?
yeah.
Are you gay?
No.
I know quite a lot of priests, vicars, and various people who work in churches who are gay and are very worried about being found out. Why does religion attract so many gay people to it, do you think? Or am I wrong? I might be wrong about this. I just thought I'd throw it in there.
I don't think I could easily answer that question. Maybe you need to ask one of them.
Well, Peter Tatchell said it was the biggest load of gay men in when he was in Rome, apart from gay pride he saw at night when he was in Rome.
Well,
and why do you always protect people within religions when they have been accused, it seems to me, of some sort of sexually deviant goings on? Religion always seems to protect its own, which worries me greatly too.
Well, if that's the case, there's no justification for it. I'm not interested in protecting people who are engaged in sex abuse of any kind. All right, there's no justification.
Well, you are.
That,
You're talking about sex abuse now because that's what this is all about. This whole idea that you change a person's sexuality. You are born with your sexuality. And tell me this, Mr. Dieppe, what is wrong with being gay anyway?
Dieppe.
Right. So first of all, sexuality is well known to be fluid. So this idea that you're born gay or born with a particular sexuality isn't correct, right? You can change your sexuality. Lots of people, many thousands of people's sexuality has changed. Many people are ex-gay, ex-trans,
they are called bisexual,
ex-LGBT,
I'm afraid,
and so on. Right. So, well, no, they don't call themselves bisexual.
But
You're
the question
imposing
I
an
ask you, is what is wrong with being a homosexual?
Well, God made homosexuals, didn't he? He made everyone.
Apparently. In fact,
God made everyone, but God made everyone. But listen, the point is that Christians have always believed that marriage is between a man and a woman, and that sexual expression is reserved for that. And we all have temptations of all different kinds, and so on. And fair enough, we have temptations. That doesn't make us any worse than anyone else. All right. But ultimately, the best expression for sex is within marriage between a man and a woman. And that's the way God's
But it can be very bad for you to, force yourself not to do something. And, some people say it can be bad. Conversion therapy can mess up, a kid's mind.
Well, it can. It's been proved it can by a number of psychosexual.
So this is why you should unqualified people shouldn't be involved in that.
No, the opposite is the case. The opposite is the case. If you've got children with gender dysphoria,
if you've got
children with gender dysphoria, 80% plus of them
might not
will
be
grow out
gender
of it
dysphoria,
in puberty, providing you don't affirm their acquired gender. And
I would really be frightened of someone like you discussing this with a child.
Practice there is not to affirm acquired gender for young children. The problem is that what the government's doing is potentially outlawing that.
You're saying 20% can't then? What about the 20% that can't? I mean, I'm sure it's more than that.
Yeah, well,
really,
so there will be some that still carry on struggling with it over some time. That's true.
Struggling with what?
Even without any treatment.
Struggling with what? Being a homosexual. What is wrong? I've asked you. Never mind. No. I have asked you over and over again, what is wrong with being a homosexual? What is wrong with it? What is it that God doesn't like about being gay? Tell me.
It's not really about being gay. It's about sexual expression.
Answer the question. You can't, can you? Because you're so bigoted, like everybody else within religion. You are so bigoted, you can't answer the question. I'll ask you again, give you a final chance. What is wrong with being gay?
Thanks for your...
Why laugh at it? Why not answer the question? Because you can't, can you?
You're the one that's being bigoted in this conversation, right?
So, I am not being bigoted at all. You don't obviously know the meaning of the word bigoted. I'm asking you, what is wrong with being gay? And you laugh at me in a very silly sort of way.
Yes, I'm enjoying
Here you are.
You
apparently represent, or you are the head of policy, public policy at Christian Concern.
I mean, what would Jesus be about with, he wouldn't be anti-gay, would he, Jesus?
No, he wouldn't
be anti anyone. That's right, but he is anti certain behaviours, and it's the practice that matters. It's not.
Let me ask it again, because I'm not getting the answer. What is wrong with being gay?
The answer is that's not the issue. The issue is your practices.
Yeah, but why does some people have urges for it and other people don't? That's not fair, then, is it? Why does God make some people want to have urges to? be homosexual.
So hang on,
All
is
of
it
us-
not? It's not
all
the
of
question
us
of being a
have-
No, I
homosexual.
mean, I don't
All
think
of us
I
have
ever have. I've
temptations-
never really
temptations
had.
of all
Well,
different
Ash,
kinds.
let's not talk about our personal life and our home life together. What is wrong with being gay? You said there's nothing wrong with being gay. It's what you do. What? We hold hands in the street?
No, that's
We might-
what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. We're talking about sexual expression here.
What? Having sex, being gay is wrong? Why would that worry anybody?
Because sexual relationships are reserved for marriage, a marriage between a man and a woman. And that's the way God's made us. That's the way God's clearly designed us to function. That's what's
Yeah, but
best
there
for
is no
family.
God.
Best-
There is no
for raising
God who
families.
thinks that. If there is a creator of the universe, I'm pretty sure the creator of the universe isn't against anybody's, as long as they are all, of course, with consent.
How do you know that, James? How do you know that?
What?
How do you know that?
What do you do? Well, how do I know you or anyone else in a married relationship is not raping their wife or their girlfriend? I don't know. Why do you ask such a stupid question?
How do you know that what God thinks? Of
And your
different
head
behaviours?
of public policy at Christian Concern, what the hell are you all concerned about?
How do
Stop
you-
laughing
how
at
do
me
you know
like
what
that.
God thinks? How do you, James? You said you're pretty sure you know what God thinks. Well, how do you know that?
I didn't say I know what God thinks. I haven't a clue. I don't even think there's a God.
You just did say that. Okay, so
No, I
So
didn't.
there we
And
are.
I want the bishops out of the House of Lords before next year as well. They're a complete waste of time. And the Archbishop of Canterbury sticking his nose in as well. You know, the majority of us are secular. We don't have the kind of stupid bigoted
That's not true. That's not true.
feelings
The
that you lot
majority of
have.
us do believe in a God of some kind. That you're in the minority here,
But
James. The
why
majority
does
of people
why does God
here
give
today-
someone that sexuality and not other people though? Why does He give some
I
people
don't
that
know.
challenge?
I
It'll
don't
be
know.
the devil,
I don't know
Ash,
about
it'll
that.
be the
I
devil.
don't know about that. So I can't explain it. All right, but all I can say is every one of us have sexual temptations of all different kinds, and we all have to deal with it, and we all have to,
So
wrestle with
if
the
I'm
things
in
and
love
learn
with
how
a
to
man,
control those things.
if I'm in love with a man and we have sex, gay sex, obviously, sometimes penetrative and other times not, or we just like to cuddle or whatever it is, then God has got so much time on his hands, he worries about that. Why don't you worry about a lot of other more important things as religious people? Why don't you go and stop the wars
Like
in
wearing
the Middle
cotton,
East?
It's not
God
the
says you
point.
can't wear cotton and wool together and stuff like that, but it's never.
James,
People never worry
listen,
about that.
this is not about God being worried. It's about what's best for you, right? And the way God's made you. And it's like following the Maker's instructions. The Maker's instructions are that sex is for marriage between a man and a woman, right? If you engage in sex in other contexts than that, it's not helping yourself. It's not helping your own sexuality. It's not helping your own relationships with other
You
people.
are a
It's not the way your
patronising
body was
fool.
designed and so
A
on. And therefore it's not
patronising
good for you.
fool.
And it's about, this is,
And
God's
quite
laws are there
frankly,
because they're good for us. That's
I've had
what it's about.
enough of this religious bigotry in this country. We are a secular nation who, quite frankly, we
We're not.
allow people to believe whatever they want to believe, and that's fine. But when it comes down to it, I don't want Muslims telling me that, it's okay to do this and okay to do that. It's not. It's just their religious belief. I don't want people like you saying, oh, no, you can't have gay sex. No. I mean, what sort of sex am I allowed as a heterosexual? Am I allowed to do things? I mean, are there some things I
you're
shouldn't
not.
do?
Yeah, you can't do sodomy.
You're obviously quite bothered about this, James. You're obviously
Am I
quite
not
bothered
allowed
about
to-
what sex you can and cannot
You're
have.
not allowed to
I think you
fornicate
probably are.
outside of marriage.
Don't go anywhere. Going to take a 30-second break.
Online, on DAB, and on the Talk Radio app. Talk Radio.
Offence archaeology on Twitter. Quite terrifying.
Don't beg Jeff Bezos. Charge him, for God's sake. Have a day off. Use some common sense.
People can say whatever they want.
James Whale on Talk Radio.
The meat and potatoes of common sense.
Talk Radio. Listen online.
Watch live on your smart TV.
James Whale.
Talk Radio.
Right, welcome back. We're talking to Tim Dieppe, who is head of policy, public policy at the Christian Concern. I've just had a tweet in from an organisation, Support Gay Christians, who says, thank you, James, for supporting us. We are ridiculed and belittled by Christians who do not realise you can be gay and you can be a Christian. And a lot of other people like that are getting in touch with me at the moment. That must really upset you, I would have thought, Tim. But a lot of Christians out there think people like you are actually harming their religious life greatly.
Okay, well, I'd ask them to go and re-examine what Jesus said and what the Bible says about what marriage is and what sexual relationships are meant for. And I think it's very, very clear, as has been clear throughout the whole of tradition of Christianity and Judaism, and I think you mentioned Islam as well, that, as I've kept saying on this program, marriage is between a man and a woman, and that is the context for sexual relationship.
Not.
And I think
two men and two women can get married. What do you mean?
Well,
and in fact, there are some religions that will marry.
Well, Church of England now has gay vicars, doesn't it? I mean, what do you think of that? Of the Church of
They
England?
don't do sodomy, though. They wouldn't be allowed to do that, would they?
Well, what do you think about gay vicars, Tim?
Listen, how they want to identify is up to them. The issue, again, I keep coming back to, is how you practice your sexual relationships, and that's the real issue.
Why is
really
God?
matters.
If there is this God you believe, he's slightly pervy, isn't he? Because he's looking down at people and wanting to know the way they shag. I mean, this is really quite appalling, to be quite honest, that you are completely obsessed with other people's sex, aren't you?
Because there's lots of other
embarrassed?
religious laws, but it's always about sex.
Yeah.
I think you're the ones that have kept going on about sex in this program so far, James.
Well, that's what we're talking about. That's what you were invited to come on and talk about. The fact that you think it's okay to try
It's meant to be about conversion therapy, actually. All right.
Well, that's
and we
about
can come back
sex,
to that
mate.
if you want to.
That's
all right?
about. Do you want to talk about abortion? No, probably not. But let's
We can
continue
talk
about
abortion if you want to. Yes.
conversion therapy. Well, yeah, tell that to a lady who's desperate not to have a child. Conversion therapy is something that should have been outlawed years ago, and for people to actually defend.
So, what exactly do you mean by that, James? What exactly? How do you define conversion therapy? What are you talking about?
Oh, for goodness' sake!
Trying to
don't try and
change
be
someone's
clever with me.
sexuality, reprogram them.
How?
Well, I don't know. Through how they do it, I don't know. I don't know. They put videos on, or
so let me tell you what I'm
porno
talking about.
videos on a lot of
Let me
them.
tell you what I'm talking about then. Okay, what we're talking about here, the government agrees that anything that's physical that's done in conversion therapy is already illegal. So what we're talking about is conversations with somebody who is struggling with unwanted sexual identities or sexual feelings of some kind. For whatever reason it might be, they're struggling with it. And they want to have a conversation about it. And what you're talking about is making it illegal for them to have the conversation that they want to have about struggles that they're having.
With an untrained person, a person
that
who
is a
just
breach of
has
free
religious
speech, and it's a
views.
breach of religious
But you
freedom
shouldn't
as
send
well.
someone for counselling if they're depressed to someone who's not qualified, to deal with depression.
If you're not
Should
happy
you
with the
stop
body
somebody
you're
from
in or
talking to
your
someone who's
sexual.
depressed about their depression?
No, but they should point
you
them
stop
to a
them from
medical
talking about it?
professional. They shouldn't
Exactly
start giving
right,
them
exactly.
advice. You should then
So
say
you
to
people
the
are
kid,
not there to
Would
do
you
that.
make it illegal to talk to somebody about their
well,
depression?
if you can mess up a kid's mind, I don't know if that's proven that
I'd
it can
make
mess
it.
up something.
Yeah, I would. I mean, honestly, I'd make it illegal to have religious schools if I had my way, because filling kids' heads with what they may or may not want in the future. I went to a Church of England school because they sort of had the.
What moral framework would you use then in your teaching in your schools, James? Where would you get your morality from in that?
Just being
Do you know,
good
when
person.
people like you ask me that ridiculously stupid question, I feel the end of our time has come. Because if you think only people who believe in this God, that seems to be a pretty horrible prospect, to be honest with you, who wants people to bow down and worship the whole time, and then not do gay sex, and they're obsessed with that and abortion and everything else. If you really, really think that people like you should be respected and that this is a Christian country or a Muslim country or any other sort of religious country, you are very, very much mistaken. Because most churches are completely empty at weekends, apart from the happy clappy set. And
You
then
don't have
that's
to
all-
learn to
it's
be a
all
good
about
person.
bit of
It's sort of
brainwashing, isn't
So
it?
It's an internal
I suggest
thing,
to
isn't
you that the churches, that the 1,000 ministers who signed this congregation are not the ones that are empty, actually. They're the ones that are the most lively ones. And that's
I'm
because
sure
they're
you've got
literally-
all those people going. I've seen the TV programs where you stand with your hands. I've seen it. It's all like mass hypnosis. Fine. It's a free world. You can do that. But don't try starting to suck the rest of us in, because that's what you want to do, isn't it? You want to try and get us in to your gang and
James,
make us
you're wanting
believe the
people to
things you
become
do.
atheists, right? And I'm wanting people
I
to
want
become
people to be
Christians,
people.
right?
I want people to come to their senses.
Let's have this debate. Let's discuss it, right? You've given me no evidence for why there isn't a God, right? And you've said you can't find where you get morality from unless there's a God, all right? So let's come back to perhaps there is a God after all, James.
Let's not bother, because that is a really
You
stupid
can get
argument.
morality without a God. There's plenty of people
course
who are
you can.
moral without reading.
No, you
them.
can't.
You know the
Well,
different
whole point,
difference.
You
can just
can't
be a
get
good
morality
person.
without a moral lawgiver. That's one of the big.
But you can be a good
arguments for God,
person, can't you,
because
without
there are
reading
moral
them?
laws because there's a moral lawgiver.
Well, yeah, but you can be good without laws. You know what's good and
You
what's
can
evil.
be good, but how do you know what's good?
Well, it's obvious,
Because
isn't
there's a
it?
moral
You know,
lawgiver.
punching someone in the face is bad, and offering someone a drink or some food is nice. I mean, I haven't read that or had to learn that. It's just you know that inside you, don't you?
Yeah, from your conscience.
Well, maybe
From your
Tim
conscience. I
doesn't.
don't need to read a Bible or anything to know that.
Have
So
you
where's the
have you
conscience
ever?
come from?
Just inside, you know, because you think about empathy. You think,
Hang
I
on,
wouldn't like that to
Ash,
happen to
hang on.
me, so I won't.
He
do it.
thinks we've been made by this fictitious character, so it's all down
Well,
to
it
him. But
could
he
be
doesn't have
right.
any
You never-
proof of it
you never
at
know.
all.
You never know.
Think back to all the wonderful things that you lot have done in the past. There was the Crusades. They were great, weren't they? Rampaging through the world and
Crusades were a
putting
response
people who
to
didn't
400
believe to the
years of
sword.
Islamic
And,
aggression, right? Now, I'm not saying they were entirely everything they did was justified, but
come on,
it was
then,
a-
stir it
after-
up. Come on, there we go. There we go. Christians and Muslims again. Religions fighting each other. Quite frankly, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should really put your tongue away. You should be ashamed of yourself, to be quite honest.
What for?
Ash, you tell him.
Well, I don't know what for. You know, what for
Well,
you-
just for sitting there
Just,
smirking at a
yeah,
lot of things
yeah.
that, you know, and then going on about they were sorting out the Muslims during the Crusades.
Oh, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it just absolutely. And then, of course,
You did try and justify the Crusades, didn't you? Then.
Yeah, you know.
sort of-
Anyway,
It was
Tim,
a
I'm sure
response
we'll
to-
never
it
meet
was-
again, and that will be a
response.
good thing as far as I am concerned. But thank you for coming on this evening and telling me why conversion for people who are gay is a good thing in the eyes of Christians. I think you are all barking mad. Absolutely.
But ring us if
barking
it's happened to
mad.
you and it's worked. If you think it has worked,
Well, if yeah.
you know what I mean, or if
We're
it hasn't
leaving
worked,
ourselves
you know.
wide open, then to have a load of people told to ring us and tell us that they were
Or it hasn't
converted
worked.
and they're happier.
Well,
Because I don't think
mean, you
there'll
know,
be very much. You know, why
freedom of
is it
speech.
religious people are so patronising as well?
But I've taught you all your morals, haven't I? Mostly.
Yeah. All my morals came from
me,
Ash.
yeah, and you do.
You know,
all right.
I know. I look after animals. I make sure that they're all okay. I
Give them water.
occasionally give people money. I try
Very
not to
occasionally.
be rude to people. Obviously, never very rude to people.
Exactly, and I've
I
taught him
just
all that.
Yeah, he taught me everything about
Without
it.
no
And
Bible, no Bible
I-
needed.
I think I've got religiosophobia.
Yeah, well, you know, you were.
Every time
You
I was
believed
talking-
it all when you were a kid. You sucked it all in, didn't you? That's the thing.
Yeah,
I
was
all
sent
right.
to a
I never
well,
really believed it that much from the start.
Yeah.
I must have been too, cynical.
I thought it was history. I thought until I was about 13
Oh, it is history. I
years
mean,
old.
Jesus was around. There's evidence for that. Yeah, Pontius Pilate. I've seen the documents. They're written.
And
on
of course,
stone.
of course, he rose from the dead, didn't he?
Oh yeah, I mean that's well
Yeah,
documented.
a load
yeah,
of people
that
stood
is,
around
yeah.
and saw that.
Yeah.
Right, if you're offended, call us. Tell us why. 0344 499 1000.